welcome to this week's episode of Win Make It. Do you think like everybody just like checked their phone to make sure they were in the right place, Bob? I mean, I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of a different welcome to the Win Make It podcast.
We have a guest with us, Tony, and we'll bring him on in a minute. He can introduce himself. Tony, this is like episode 440 for us or something. Every single episode for 4 years has started the exact same way, and that was not it. Why did you do that, Chad?
I don't know. I wanted to make sure everyone's paying attention. I had somebody say to me the other day, Bob, when the Win Make Give episodes start, you're so loud. You're just there. So hey, for that person, there you go. Just being a little quiet for you. Bob, things have to be different. Look, if we do things the same every time, every way, we just get numb to them. You know that. So what's something in your world lately?
Your mom's going to be pretty mad that you started this podcast different. One of our 2 listeners is going to be like, what is he doing?
Confusing me. Bob, what's something you've done differently in your life of recent that mix things up so that you're not just numb to it and it's become background noise?
I
love putting Bob on the spot.
So I've started. I'm taking a different approach with my shoes. If you're interested, like I have probably
everybody's interested when it comes to your shoes, Bob.
I have probably 60 pairs of shoes I've never worn. I don't know. Maybe it's 50. I don't count them. So here's what I decided. I'm going to start selling those, and then I'm going to because I would never ever. You know, how much is a pair of shoes? They're like $220, right? 250 sometimes.
Sure.
You know, like the Nike Air Maxes, sometimes I'm getting really lucky. I get them for like 180, right? And I buy them and I never wear them, which is ridiculous. I know this. I have a problem, Chad. But I would never spend like $1,500 on a pair of shoes. But there's a whole bunch of Jordan, these like custom Jordans, like Off-Whites. You know, they're $1,500, they're $2,500. I would never spend that much money. First off, just because personally I couldn't do it, right? Secondarily, my wife would absolutely murder me. And so,
absolutely.
But what I've figured out is she's now like kind of become used to shoes coming in the house at $200 a pop. So I'm going to sell those, and I'm going to start buying. So I'm going to sell 6, 8, 10, however many pairs it takes, and then I'm going to go buy the $2,000 pair of shoes. So that's something that's changed in my world recently, Chad. I have stopped buying. I think I told you this. I've bought like 1 pair of shoes in the last year, which is insane for you. Maybe it's been 2.
We went through the depression with you.
Yeah.
We went through the depression with you. We know. Hey, look, you can also sell this to your wife. Look, I sold 5 pairs. I made the $1,500 that I bought. Now you have 1 pair instead of 5 in the closet.
No, she's 100% on board. She's like, because I have 2 closets in our house maxed out. I got a big stack of them right here behind my couch. I mean, there's 9 shoe boxes right here. Like, she is fed up. So she's totally on board with this.
All right, Bob, my recommendation to you by the end of the year 2025, you have officially started Shoes Anonymous, right? It's time to either join or create the club if it's not out there yet. We're done with you and your shoes.
I'm on one of those on Facebook. Like I have a group, a place I can go and talk to these people I don't know, by the way.
But people who get it.
They get it. They get it. They understand my pain.
All right. Well, I got somebody here who gets it. I got somebody here who's going to join us. He's going to bring some great conversations, Bob. Maybe somebody will even help you with your shoe issues, even though that was not the purpose of the conversation. Who knows?
I want to hear a story or two, like we're around the campfire. You know what I'm saying?
Whoa, Bob, jumping ahead a little bit. You can't give away the good stuff at the beginning. We got to talk to Tony first and get to the campfire stuff. But there you go. You've jumped right into it. So let's bring him onto the call. Your friend and mine. Great hairstyle, Tony Martignetti. Welcome to the Win Make Give podcast.
Tony Martignetti.
I said that.
Did I get it?
I said that.
You were close.
I said that.
You were close.
Get out of here, Bob Stewart. Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You guys are awesome. I just love the energy you bring it on. And I like that you changed it up today because I feel special now.
Hey, you are literally one of like 450. Like you are the one that it started that way.
Bob, maybe I should actually even read a bio while I'm here. No, I can't go that far. I can't go crazy.
Tony, we don't read bios on the Win Make Give podcast. Everybody knows this. If he started reading your bio, I might have just shut the computer down, Chad. Like we're in bizarro world at that point. I don't want any part of it. Tony, do me a favor.
I get you, Bob.
Introduce yourself to our audience. Let them know kind of who you are without the professionally crafted bio.
Yes, of course. I will not be professional on this.
Good.
No. So first, they said my name already, Tony Martignetti, and I am a leadership advisor, author, podcast host myself. And I've been in the world of many different worlds, but I got my start as an artist who then got into the world of biotech. And then after 25
Natural
years
segue.
working in biotech, said,
Natural segue.
Yeah. Completely. I'm totally waiting to get back to that one.
yeah. And then, realized that I was not really doing the work I was meant for, and decided to take the leap into the world of, helping people to create their lives on purpose, designing purposeful lives, and particularly with leaders who I call outlier leaders, who are trying to create a path to connecting with others and using the power of connection to really create meaningful lives.
Why is that an outlier,
Okay.
Tony? Like why, if that's an outlier, somebody that's using connections to create a powerful life, then that would indicate that most leaders are not doing that? Or why do you call that an outlier?
Particularly outliers, the people I work with they're usually very technical in nature, and they're particularly strong in one area. I'm starting to call them more multidimensional in the sense that they're really strong in one dimension, but what they need to do is they need to tap into other dimensions of who they are, their other identities. And when they do, they realize that more and more, it's by tapping into other areas of who they are, they can connect with other people. Think about it this way. There's if you have a strong engineering background, well, you may not have good social skills. And I'm not saying that to paint the picture of everyone's the same.
Hey, how many of you guys ever spent time with a technical founder? Hey, I'm telling you, some of and big fans of some of the guys I've had the chance to partner with and see that, but man, social awkwardness.
It's a different conversation.
Is at a super high level with a technical founder often. At least I've found that to be the case. So I'm right there with you, Tony. I'm like, okay, I've seen that behavior. I get it.
Totally. And it's just it's in some ways, I'm a translator. I kind of help to be the decoder ring for them to kind of help them see, well, how is what I care about most translate with other people and in ways enlist them in the vision of getting things done. So.
Okay. I want to go backwards before we go forwards.
Sure.
You got to tell us about this. So I'm going to guess painter when you say artist, because you just used that expression, right? Painting a picture. I'm thinking that's where your head goes. Painting, yes?
Well, a couple other things too. I do glassblowing, which is something I've tapped into over the past few years. And I also did a lot of drawing.
Okay. What's your style?
My style? I do a lot of different abstract painting. I don't really get into I like to be
where you're just splattering paint on things, or just cubes all over the place. I mean,
a little more cubist in style. So.
Yeah, you can't say that word that easily. And then to biotech, is that what you
hold on? I want to flex my glass blowing knowledge because I only know of one glass blower. My mom has one of his pieces. Chihuly. Yeah, he's like the only, right? That's like the only one anybody knows. I'm sure there's others, by the way. I'm just not a glass blowing expert, but I just want everybody to know that I know who Chihuly is. That's it. Move on.
He's amazing.
Well, he's blind, right? He does that blind too.
Well, he's got a studio here in Tacoma, Washington, which is not too far from me. And in fact, when I had just turned 21, this is crazy too. There is a bar in downtown Tacoma that has 15 Chihuly glass pieces on display above their bar, which is insane because they're all worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bar with a bunch of drunk idiots running around. It always, every time I'd be in there, I'd be like, that thing's worth $500,000. Anyway, sorry, random side note.
All you need is a bar brawl to break out, and then you've got some real problems.
I'm sure they're insured. All right. And then into biohack or biotech?
Yeah.
How does an artist, right? Yeah. I mean, completely creative, end up in something completely science-based field? And how have both of those polar opposites then helped Tony become who he is today by having that access to both of those. That's where I'm going with that, you see. So tell me a little bit about the biotech, and then let's go from there.
Well, I mean, I landed in biotech because first and foremost, people told me, like, you're not going to make it as an artist because people don't, live on a salary of an artist unless you're kind of Chihuly, I guess. And you have a lot of starving days. And I didn't starve, so that's a good thing. But I decided to go pre-med because I was interested in, becoming a radiologist. And so science was my other area of interest. So I decided that was the path. Coaxed into it, I guess, pushed into it by well-meaning adults. And then what I found myself doing as I was in pre-med is that I was seeing the business side of biotech or of science. And so that's where I pivoted while I was in my schooling years. And so I ended up getting into more finance and strategy. And so I spent most of my years working with really amazing companies, but helping them to understand how do you bring these businesses to life in terms of bringing deals, doing all types of strategy around ensuring their business can be successful. So I did that. It was very analytical, which is completely out of character, but at the end of the day, I was good at it and I was rewarded for it. And I kept on getting rewarded for it. But what happens when you get rewarded for something that you're not really meant for is you keep on doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of times, you look at somebody and they're, let's use me, I'm mid 40s, right? And you're like, wow, he's been doing this for so long, he must love it. And then you're like, no, I'm burned out on this thing. Like it happened to me, right? I started doing it and I was kind of good at it, and so they gave me more money to do it, and now but I don't love it. It just happened to me.
Yeah.
I think most people probably their job is
that explains everything. That explains so much, Bob.
Seriously. I mean, I'm not that far off from that, by the way. Like, I think there's a few forks in my road, Chad. Like when Ben called me and said, hey, do you want to come work with me? I think I made the right decision there, right?
Sure.
But I mean, a lot of us just open our eyes one day at mid 40s and we're like, how did I get here? And it just happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't
if
by
I could only
design.
remember my mid 40s. Sure. All right, so Tony, let me take this into one of the areas I want. My job's to do the segues. That's what I do. Bob's talking about a little burnout. So let's talk about fulfillment. You're talking about doing a job. When you get rewarded for doing a job that is not really your thing. What do? You stay. You just keep doing it, and then you don't end up with a fulfilled life.
Yes.
But one of the things you talk about a lot is finding fulfillment in careers and in life in general.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this mountain, climbing this mountain. I have a book called Achieve Your Apex. So we're using the exact same term, just different words to get there. Tell me about your take on this concept.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there because it's exactly where this was headed. This idea that you fall into a pattern. You keep on climbing and you're like, well, I guess I'll be happy when I get to that thing eventually. And then realize that, this mountain just keeps on getting more steep and more steep. And then you realize you're just like, I'm postponing that moment, keep on postponing until you're burnt out. And that's exactly what I was. I was burnt out trying to be something that I was not. And so I call it Climbing the Right Mountain. That was the name of my first book. And the realization is that you have to enjoy the climb. Even though it can be a struggle, there's always going to be challenges with growth. It has to be something that you're actually finding a reward along the way and not waiting till the end to find fulfillment. So for me, what I found is, especially through working with people in my coaching journey too, is this idea of like, if you're dreading every moment, you're on the wrong path. And so you have to occasionally step back and say, how am I feeling about the moment, about the journey I'm on? If I am dreading it, then I know there's something wrong about what I'm doing. If I'm just maybe having a struggle moment, that's maybe natural. It's part of the journey. But if you are, looking to you're not sure, just take a step back. You got to pause, slow things down, and assess where you are on this mountain before it's too late.
You've got 8 guideposts, Tony. You got these.
Yeah.
I got to imagine that's one of them, right? If I'm feeling I don't want to go to work today, this is you're on the wrong path, right? That'd be a guidepost saying, hey, buddy, turn, go get on another mountain. What are some of the other guideposts we can be looking for to either tell us we're on the wrong path or no, you're in the right place, keep going?
Yeah, one of them, which I love sharing, is the environment. Check your environment. Look at your environment around you. Is it supporting your vision, or is it one that is or supporting you to be the best self that you can be, or is it one that is just reinforcing your situation? So check your environment, and also remember you can shape your environment. One of the things that's amazing about humans is we have the ability to adapt. And that's great, but it's also one of the flaws we have, which is you can adapt to a toxic environment very quickly. So we have to sometimes
like that frog being boiled, the frog being boiled slowly, that all of a sudden we find ourselves in this, how'd I get here? What the heck's going on? Because we just adapted to a bad environment.
100%. This is exactly it. And the other one I'll connect to, which I really love, is this idea of making sure we're focusing on not on the gap, but more in the gain. Coming back to this concept from now his name's escaping me, but Dan Sullivan, his theory of gap and gain, which I think is so powerful when you're on the journey of creating something. Don't always be looking how far you still have to go. Be thinking about what's happening along the way that you can look back to and say, gosh, I've already made a lot of progress in this path that I'm on, and appreciating the things that you've already done,
Chad,
and allowing yourself to land on, that progress.
Chad, did you just walked off? Did you go grab that book? You grabbed Gap versus Gain.
You remembered the author's name. I was going to get the book. It's over here on my shelf.
No, you had it.
And here's what I'll say about the book. If it was 25 pages long, it would have been long enough, because he made the point in the first 25 pages and then just kept telling the point again and again and again and again for the next 200. Folks, I hereby give you permission not to finish a book you've started reading if you get it. Put the book down and go read something else.
We'll go take action on what you learned.
Thank you.
I watched this with my son. So I have 3 boys. Tony, my youngest, is 7, and he about a year ago decided he wanted to be a really good basketball player. He's like 6 years old, right? And so every day we spend 20 minutes at least. Some days it's longer, but doing dribbling practice. And the gap, because he's like watching guys on his iPad in the NBA, right? And then he's going and he's playing up now against third graders. And so he's going and these kids are better than him. And for him, for the longest time, he's just looking at that gap, right? He's like, I got, and in some ways, it starts to create frustration. And so I'm constantly, I probably do this once a month at least. And so I will bring him back and I'll have him watch videos of when he started a year ago. And like him and being like, look how far you've come. Forget about that, man. We will get to that eventually, right? That's not how you track your progress, by looking at how far you have to go. It's by looking at how far you've come. So I absolutely love that. And I can really quickly, he turns it into there's a sense of pride from him at seeing how far he's come versus almost like a sense of defeat in looking at how far he has to go. I love that.
All right. So Tony, before you say anything, folks, now you don't have to read the book at all. Bob just gave you an in-depth summary of it. Don't bother. Thank you, Bob Stewart. Tony, your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just add on one quick thing about, Bob's got an issue with his shoes, his sneakers. Yeah. I've got an issue with books, and I have way too many books.
Normally I'll bring up, by this point, I would have brought up your background. It's super impressive.
Well, thank you. But I'll just say, like, it's just, I buy way too many books, but just like you said, I'll say there's an element of like a lot of books just fill the number of pages and you could just kind of get it from the title, and he's like, yeah, I get it. That's the point. You don't have to finish the book. I love that you said that. So
let me put you on the spot then before I take you to the next conversation. Favorite book for development, not novel or something. Favorite book for development, not written by you.
Oh, well, then, that's just cancel everything out.
I get that.
Right. Kidding. My favorite book, and I always come back to this one, is The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander and Rosamund Stone Zander. And the reason why I love this book is because it's easy to read, but it's also just fascinating. It's, Benjamin Zander is the conductor or former conductor, I think now, of the Boston Youth Philharmonic. Not that I'm into the orchestra or nothing, but he's just a great
I'm telling all your
character.
friends, Tony. Everybody knows now. Tony loves the orchestra. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But if you're an orchestra guy, just own it, Tony. Own it. No, I'm just
I'll
kidding.
own it. But I've actually met him in person, and he's a wonderful guy. He got an entire group of us to sing in German, and none of us knew any German, just by leaning into this idea of what's possible, when we kind of come together. Really, some of the things that he leans to in this book is we always start with a sense of like despair. And, if you think about the Viktor Frankl types of things in The Man's Search for Meaning, it comes from that place. But we always have to be saying what's possible if we just try. We get into that zone of possibility and just lean in. And so it's just a wonderful book full of so many great lessons.
The title again for our audience, if someone's like, oh, I got to go get that book.
The Art of Possibility.
There you go. Art of Possibility. We've also heard about Climbing the Right Mountain by our guest, Tony, here with us. Tony, I know where Bob wanted to go with the conversation from the stuff that we find. Bob likes to stalk our people and go through your websites and your socials and then be like, I got this. Before I let Bob go there, we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are our audience. That's our audience. And networking is always a thing in the world of entrepreneurship, right? Whether you're officially going to a network event or whether you're literally just going into Starbucks and you're being intelligent enough not to just do the drive-through window and get out of there with your drink, but you're going in, you're always networking. I mean, would you agree that almost everything is a networking opportunity, whether it's official sounding or not?
Yeah, everything happens through conversation. So
talk to us about that, because I know you like to talk about the art of curiosity conversations. Tell us a little bit more about that. Help our audience become that much better at that networking with just something you're going to give them today on the call.
Absolutely. I mean, I literally had this conversation earlier today about how if there's one thing you could take away or lean into more is get better at meaningful conversations. And this means really getting, if you're a leader or someone who's running a company, ensuring that you're not just kind of going in with a goal, a transactional element of networking. It has to be about creating a longer path, getting to know people on a deeper level, because ultimately it's the relationship that's going to win you business. It's going to win you a long-term relationship with your employees. All the things that you want are going to come from getting to know them on a deeper level. What are the things they care about? What are the things they do outside of work? The things that happen at work they'll all get addressed, but they only happen through understanding what motivates the people who are there. And so if you can play into that part, then that's where you're going to be able to have a really good, powerful relationship. And I often think about it, enter the conversation from a play angle as opposed to a work angle. And what
tell me more about that.
Yeah. So if you were to go to meet somebody, what are some things that you personally enjoy that you want to find out more about? Like, what are your interests that you would lead with? For example, if you were to have a conversation with somebody, even in the work environment, so like, what is something that's been lighting you up lately? What are some things that have been, interesting to you? For example, when you started this conversation, that's intentional to like get people thinking beyond just, hey, we're going to talk about leadership today. Right. You're talking about sneakers. It's awesome. I love that. It's very easygoing, and it also sets the container for a more relaxed conversation.
Well, Bob's obsessed with his sneakers. If the sneakers or his son playing basketball don't come up every 3 episodes, I think it's in his contract. I have to make sure to bring it up.
Living right now, baseball. I might sneak in baseball cards, Tony. I got back into those after 30 years of not being into baseball cards. Can you, you dropped one right there. Tell me something that lights you up right now. I love that. That was a really good one. Give me one or two more kind of lead-in questions like that. Because I was at a networking event. I don't know, tell me what you're interested. Like, it's just, it's hard to like kind of make that that pass through into like a real serious kind of a question without it seeming like forced and weird or something.
Well, even like having a future focused conversation. I mean, a future question, something like, hey, what's something you're looking forward to in the next few weeks or next month? Not work related. There's things like that help people think like, oh yeah, like, it's funny you mentioned that. My son is doing this, or my wife is doing that, or I'm going to this place, and that could be something around speaking at an event too, which then opens the door to, oh my gosh, you're speaking at that event, I'm going to be there. And, those are the kind of things that allow you to be able to create a common connection as well. So find out those types of things. So it could be a future orientation, or it could be a back orientation. Or it could be what's going on now, or what have you been doing lately? If you're in a new country or a new city for yourself and them, ask them, what have you been doing since you've been in town?
Would you say the idea is, whichever question you ask to open that conversation, it's to find the connection, right? Yes. That's the ultimate goal. It's to find out that I'm not into sneakers. Basketball is the sport I care least about, but I keep having conversation with Bob until I found something that I said, aha, there's the thing we can connect on, so that I can develop the relationship, follow up with him saying, hey man, you mentioned blah, blah, whatever it is.
Or at least something that he's passionate about, that you're curious about, right?
Okay.
And you being curious about that makes it something that you're going to ask more questions. And then ultimately that person's going to ask you, so what are you curious about? What are the things that you get lit up about?
Yeah, no, Bob doesn't do that part. He does the first part.
What's funny, Chad? Here's what's funny. Most people don't do that second part. Like,
no, of course they don't.
My wife jokes all the time, Tony, I'm one of these guys, when I sit next to you on an airplane, you're either not going to hear one word out of me the whole time, or we are going to be in an engaged conversation for the next 2.5 hours. And but the thing is most of the time I'm not saying anything. I'm acting curious, right? I'm like, wow, no way. Engineer at Boeing? Like, well, are you like down on the floor, like, building the levers into the plane, or and I'm just, it's just a series of me. And man, you can really get somebody going. Yeah. And people will say,
well, Tony, when you logged in, I don't watch basketball. I don't care about basketball. To me, I don't enjoy the sport at all. I didn't grow up playing it. My hometown didn't have a team back then. So I never got connected to basketball. But when you logged in before we started recording, you came in the middle of me asking Bob about this big trade that just happened recently in the world of basketball, because I know it's important to Bob. Bob's a big basketball fan, so I knew he'd have an opinion on it. But it was just to create the bond between Bob and I, and then ask him, because I know he would have an opinion.
Wait, Chad's like sharing all his secrets. Wait, he didn't give a shit about that? Like, what?
No.
Now
I shared a bunch of them with you, Bob. You haven't caught on to any of them yet.
All right, I have a short memory, okay? You tell me these things, and by next week when we're recording, I'll forget it all anyway.
I know.
I want to point something out that's really interesting that you both are bringing up, is this idea that, like, what if it's not reciprocated, right? Well, the only thing you can do is you can control yourself. You can control how you show up to a conversation, and hopefully it's mirrored back, right? Hopefully you get the same in return, but you can't guarantee that. But at least you know. At least you know that you're doing your part in the conversation.
Yeah, at least you know you're on the other part. You're on the other side of a real selfish asshole. Like, wow, you don't give a crap about anybody but yourself. Okay, got it. I only have.
Now you know who not to go into business with, right? I mean, sometimes networking isn't only creating business; it's creating paths to not get into business with, because we don't end up adapting to that environment, as you mentioned earlier in the call.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately that's what you want to be looking for is this someone who is just self-centered and therefore is not really into it, or, it's the wrong timing. It's just, they're just not into networking at this moment. So there's a lot of things you're going to be looking out for, but I think it's important to own your part of the conversation. It is a two-way street.
We're not done here, folks, yet. I'm going to get, the website is ipurposepartners.com. No, he doesn't work with Apple, I don't believe, right? But it's just like how Apple has made everything an ipurposepartners.com. If you want to find out more about Tony, connect with him after this conversation, do a little bit more research. Tony, we hadn't had your lessons on networking yet apparently Bob and I are good at it, because one of the questions we asked you at the beginning of the call was, Tony, if we were going to talk about one thing today, what is it that's got you fired up right now? And you said, I'm really talking about this thing that I call Campfires of Connection.
Yes.
So give me the Campfire of Connection conversation. Start that one off. Tease everybody enough, because you said that's the thing they should be coming to the website to learn about right now.
Yeah. And it's great you bring this, because we're actually, it's a good segue from our last conversation. Campfires of Connection was something that I created after my last book called Campfire Lessons for Leaders. And what it really comes from is this idea that when we get to know our stories, when we get to know ourselves, we connect with ourselves, the next move is to go outward and get to know other people. And that process is what I've created with the Campfires of Connection. This idea of coming together inside organizations and, in communities of all sorts, that basically allows them to share elements of who they are that they wouldn't typically share. It's creating a safe container. Fire is optional. Depends on on where we're at, if it's safe. And the idea is just to allow them to share elements of their past through a series of questions and a series of exercises that allows them to understand more about where they're coming from. Because one of the things that I strongly believe is that when we get to know ourselves, get to know each other, we actually can do a lot more work together that is more meaningful. We get to know the strengths. We get to know who we are as individuals, that then we come together as a collective and do great work together.
Tony, if we're at the fire and Chad shows up with his guitar, can we just kick his ass away? Yeah. Okay.
Throw my guitar in the fire if I bring it, Bob.
I kid. But I don't know. I love the vision of this. Like, I love closing my eyes and thinking about, like, practically being around the campfire, sharing stories.
Yeah.
Because it connects me back to, like, college for me. Like, that was the last time I was, camping often. But that would be like, I was forming these friendships and bonds that I carry with me today. And it was that process of, like, getting to know my best friend Tyson, right? And I love the visual of sitting around the campfire. I think that's so smart.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason why I chose that is not just because it's a nice branding. It's because it's where stories have been told since the beginning of human history, or since we've invented fire. And I think we discovered it, I should say. The idea is that there's an intimacy that gets created. You're not going to be talking about this quarter's report is saying that we are not doing well. And, you're not going to be talking about those types of things. You're going to be talking about things that are meaningful. Maybe you're going to be talking about your dreams and, things that you care about. Or you're going to be telling stories about where you came from, what are your origin stories? And that's all on the table, because your expectation here is that you're in an intimate setting and there's been some trust built.
I think
I always
like, look
go
at,
ahead.
I don't know. Some of us have more maybe impactful origin stories than others, but I do really believe there's a way for all of us to present our origin story in a way that connects with people. Chad, that. I mean, Ben, I think if you were to go back
a powerful origin
story, and if you were to listen to him tell it, this is one of our co-founders. You were listening to him tell it, Tony, 10 years ago. He's refined it today to a level where the amount of connection you feel to that thing is 100x what it was when he began telling the story publicly. And I just think we could all really, work on it sounds so contrived or whatever, but like, work on it.
That's what I want to ask,
really,
right? That's exactly what I want to ask, Tony. How do we do that, right? I mean, Ben has a great origin story, and Bob, it took Ben a long time to get comfortable even telling it, right? You say 10 years ago when he started, but I mean, we knew him 15, 20 years ago when he was like, no, don't tell people that stuff, right? He didn't like that even coming out. I grew up a comic nerd, right? I mean, it's always the origin story, right? Spider-Man's origin story, Superman's origin story. I don't have some cool origin story. Give us some tips, Tony, as we're getting near the end of this here. That's going to make me say, I want to come to this program. I want to be a part of whatever it is you're teaching, to help me say, how do I develop an origin story? Because we always hear these big superhero ones or people like Ben's that are really dramatic. And a lot of us are just average. Help us. How do we develop an origin story?
Such a beautiful question. And honestly, I'm so glad you asked, because this is exactly what I strongly believe. Everyone's got an origin story that needs to be shared, and we have to practice it. And it doesn't just happen immediately. And you're like, oh, this is my beautiful origin story, and here's what's going to inspire people. This is part of the reason why I started my podcast, The Virtual Campfire, is because people don't arrive on stage knocking it out of the park and doing amazing things. They arrive there through a gradual process and what I call flashpoints. And this is what I'll share with you. These are the elements that we can kind of work through. Is think back to through your life and think about the moments that have ignited your gifts into the world, the flashpoints, and slow down. Don't try to go too fast and say, okay, well, it was this, but really get intentional about saying, well, yeah, maybe it was that when I was a child, what did I do? What were the things that were around me? What did I most gravitate towards? What are the things that, when I was a teenager that the awkward things that would show up in my life. And then maybe there were some moments when you started to get frustrated around your career that had you moving in a different direction. A lot of the people came on my show have had moments that have had them, dealing with suicide or death of a loved one or, near-death experiences. But that's not always what we need to be worried about. One of the things that I personally have dealt with is I've looked at other people's stories and I'm saying it's almost like trauma porn. And I'm sorry to be so weird about that, but
we get it.
There is something like that. And I think people think you have to have that really dramatic story to be comparing yourself to them. That's not true. We all have our own stories and they all inspire.
Yeah, I'm thinking about mine as you're talking about it, right? And you're saying go back and think about it.
I'm thinking about real quick. You've said over the years pretty normal, average upbringing, right? Not a lot of trauma.
Absolutely. My parents were divorced when I was 6 months old, so to me, I didn't have to go through it. I just thought every kid had 8 grandparents, 4 parents, right? I thought that was normal. So it wasn't that traumatic thing when it was happening and when it happened. I don't have trauma. The first person to pass away in my family that I can remember, I was already in high school when my grandfather passed away, was the first. So I didn't deal with that kind of stuff. But I am sitting here saying, all right, as Tony's saying it, I'm going back and I'm thinking about, all right, I remember that moment when that college professor made me become part of the stage show, even though I didn't want to get into acting. He made me get up there because that was a history that I had, and he brought it out for the fact that I'm on stage and I'm always presenting. I go back to junior achievement, and I remember when I got to take over and we turned the company around. It's like, okay, so there was business stuff. If I sat down and somebody asked me a few questions about, I can see maybe I'm not getting bit by a radioactive spider, which I got to tell you, I hate spiders, but my whole life I always said if a radioactive one comes along, I'm letting that damn thing bite me.
You got to swallow it.
I could probably come up with a pretty cool sounding origin story, and not for the sake, Tony, of having the dramatic Spider-Man, Superman origin story, but it's to connect with people and at the same time build authority with those people and build some level of confidence in me that they're sitting there saying, oh, okay, now I'm willing to work with this person or hear from this person because they've had this origin story. I can see how powerful it is that we all take the time to develop ours.
Yeah, and even more so, it's just to understand why you do the things you do now, and it puts a lot of that confidence that you're in the right place now.
Which goes back to the conversation we had at the beginning of having that fulfillment, because now I'm going to have that guidepost that's going to say, I'm in the right place. I feel great doing it. Now I understand why. It's because what I did when I was 12 or 15 or 22 along the path, I'm seeing that all led here.
By the way, if you want a shortcut on your origin story, go to therapy. A lot of my origin stories come out in there, Tony. I didn't know
not the positive ones. Sometimes that's the negative parts. That's the trauma porn right there, right?
I didn't need to be right until she reminded me of Mr. Bush in third grade kicking me out of class because I said that the fucking Mount Rainier wasn't as high. Anyway.
Another issue, Tony. We hear this one about once every 6 weeks. That one has to come up. And if you did not know, Bob won for his Bob won for his Smokey the Bear coloring contest. Also, it's another one of the stories that Bob likes to keep reminding us. All right, Tony, the website, it's ipurposepartners.com.
Yes.
I heard a bunch of books in there: Campfire Lessons for Leaders, Climbing the Right Mountain. Where do they find the books on the website, or are we just going to Amazon and we're searching your name that none of them are going to spell right?
Exactly. No, they're both on the website, on my website, and they're also on Amazon. So,
all right. So folks, if you want to get it right, just go to ipurposepartners.com, find the books. Then you can always go to Amazon to order them if you want the immediate shipping that's going to come with it. But you don't have to worry about figuring out how to spell Tony's name because it'll be there on the website. And you've got your own podcast, Virtual Campfire Podcast, if people want to check it out and hear what you've got going on over there. One last thought. I don't care if it's something you've already said that you're like, this is on my heart. I want to share this with your audience one more time. Or you guys didn't even ask me about this. I want to give you this. Give me one last minute for the Win, Make, Give podcast.
I love this question, which is, I love this, thing that I like to share, which is about expanding your vision and narrowing your focus. Oftentimes people feeling stuck in their lives or just feeling like something's missing. The best thing you can do is stop and just step away from the things you're focusing on. Expand your vision. Look what's bigger, what's around the corner, what's just a little bit bigger than what you've been thinking. And then once you identify some different paths or some things you want to explore, then you can narrow down and start to put that into action. Focus on that one thing and make that one thing happen. But we need to be able to, really start by getting expansive. Does that make sense?
It does to me, and we hope it does to our audience. Folks, make sure you're subscribed so that these episodes just drop for you automatically, because you don't want to miss when we get a great interview like this. And we have had a few. We're on a great streak of some great interviews with some great guests, and then some decent episodes when Bob talks. We are having some good stuff, folks. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're sharing.
With every week. This is crazy, right?
We love you, Bob Stewart. Folks, until our next episode, as always, do good.